Welcome to the Movies to Watch Before You Die podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, along with my cousin and co-host,
Gab.
And we have, I guess, our biggest fan who is long overdue to be on this podcast and probably suggested this movie like 6 months ago. So,
Yeah.
Scotty Cameron is in the podcast.
Yes, I am the jackass who recommended Vampire's Kiss.
No.
You know what?
No. You are the hero who recommended Vampire's Kiss.
Well, I was quoting Dylan there.
It's so risky now because anytime you suggest something else, you had the first movie to watch before you die. So now there's nowhere to go but down.
True. Yeah. I will say I had a very hard time not comparing this movie to Vampire's Kiss. Like it genuinely had to be like, Gab, focus, different movie, different genre,
so
different vibe. I know, but
well, you
the
don't
whole
have
time
this movie without Jake Gyllenhaal. You don't have Vampire's Kiss without Nicolas Cage. So
right.
Yes, these are not on.
100%.
Neither one of these is an ensemble film. They lean heavily on one performance.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you haven't been able to tell by the title, we're talking about the 2011 movie Source Code. Scotty, I'm going to tee you up here. Give me the succinct version. What is Source Code about?
What's this all been about? What am I working toward?
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
I dive at your bottom. I bloody well ought to.
A combat veteran who wakes up in the body of a college professor who has to unveil a terrorist plot in 8 minutes, and if he fails, he has to start over and find new clues each time in this trial.
Okay, let's see how that compares to
pretty good.
IMDb's plot summary. I feel like I said plot summary weird there. A
You
soldier
do
wakes
say
up.
everything weird.
East Broadway. Well, isn't that the thing? You feel like I say the weirdest?
East Broadway.
Whatever. A soldier wakes up in someone else's body and discovers he's part of an experimental government program to find the bomber of a commuter train within 8 minutes.
Pretty damn good.
Close. Which I do feel like the movie, well, not the movie, the program, the actual Source Code program, which we'll get into it a lot more, obviously, is like, you got to figure out who did this train bomb thing, but we don't really care about the train. We're just worried about another one. So don't worry about the train, but we got to know who did it.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, I don't feel like, I can't remember the last time we had this, but this movie only has one tagline.
Whoa. I love it.
So they got to make it work. The tagline is, make every second count.
Terrible.
You think?
Yeah.
I think it's on theme.
Let me ask you a
Yeah,
question.
I mean, it's what Christina says at the end. I'd make those
Seconds count.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it any less lame or cliche.
You wanted to
Now,
be like, this
listen.
movie's off the tracks.
No, I don't want it to have a tagline at all. Do you remember the Justin Timberlake movie where
No.
rich people have more time than
In
the
time.
poor people? Yeah, I didn't see it, but I imagine I would have liked it. Was it good?
Did you see it, Scotty?
No, when I heard Justin Timberlake, the first movie I came to mind was Black Snake Moan, or with
Really?
Samuel L. Jackson.
The first movie that comes to mind for Justin Timberlake for me is it Trek the Third that he's in? I think it's that one.
Yes.
I think so.
Not The Social Network?
That probably would have made more sense. But I'll tell you, I saw that movie, I'm certain, either in time or about time. And I can tell you I saw it, and I have zero memory of it, which to me means it could not have been, it was not either good enough or bad enough to be memorable.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
that's fair. I never saw it. You know what movie I think about at least twice a week? The Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie where he's like a bicycle guy.
I was going to say Looper, but you're not talking about Looper.
No. He's like a bicycle delivery guy in New
I
York
know what
City,
you're
and it's
talking
like
about.
the Fast and the Furious, but for bicyclists.
Oh, this is so frustrating to me because I know the movie, but I can't think of the title. But we're not
Oh,
supposed to be
come
talking
on.
about Joseph Gordon-Levitt right now. He's not in Source
Sorry.
Code.
Sorry. But
I mean, he could
anyway, he could be.
He would have done a good job.
Jake Gyllenhaal to me, not really. I don't really feel one way or the other about him. I'm very ambivalent toward Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's an opinion, Gab. So should we be getting into opinion time?
No, we gotta. Don't we have to say more?
I always feel like we're going to say more in the opinions, but okay. Scotty, tell me more about what this movie's about.
Well, so in the film, each time Jake Gyllenhaal is in the source code, he begins to realize that these people in the program aren't just AI programmed to recreate an event, that he starts to begin to think, maybe these are actually real people, and he wants to not only find the bomber and prevent it in his time, but then also save the people in the source code.
Yes.
And so he becomes convinced that it's real.
And it is interesting when you're talking about a movie like that. It's like it's one of those Groundhog Day-esque movies where he keeps repeating a moment or a series of moments. So there is an extent to which he's saying that, and it's like, Scotty's not saying that much. What's this movie about? And it's like, no, it's about that because he's doing that over and over again. Like 80% of this movie takes place on that train.
Now I feel comfortable moving into opinion time.
Okay.
I have a right to my opinion, and
Yes. Now, Scotty, this is when we say it live.
Instead, yeah.
In this critic's opinion,
that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, I have a right to my opinion, and my opinion is you have no right to your opinion.
My first opinion is I don't do well with timelines, as we know. So I'm a little confused. However, I didn't want to Google it because I wanted to have this conversation on the air. So Jake Gyllenhaal is repeating the same 8 minutes. That I understand. He's trying to find out who bombed the train. He's trying to tell the government who did it to prevent a future attack. Right? Okay. But
yes.
The attack already happened. And no matter what he does, he can't undo it. Right? Correct?
That's what he is told is true. But each time he's in it, he starts to be convinced that he's not reliving 8 minutes of a past event, but rather going back to a past event within the last 8 minutes. And then as he does things, that changes how events play out. So like Michelle Monaghan's purpose is like, this is a real person, not an AI in a recreation program.
If you're thinking of it from a more science fiction-y way, instead of going back to those last 8 minutes, he's going to another version of reality, those 8 minutes.
Okay, I hate
because
that
otherwise,
so
if I'm
much.
thinking of, because when they first described it, Jeffrey Wright's character, which, do you remember the name of Jeffrey Wright's character?
Dr. Rutledge.
Yes, I want to call him evil, but sort of ambivalent, and I guess just
he's morally
obsessed with
gray.
his mission. Yes. He says it allows you to experience, Sean Fentress, who is the man most similar to Coulter Stevens, which is Jake Gyllenhaal's character.
Same weight, height, and gender.
Yes, you're able to relive the last 8 minutes of his life. And the thing that really annoyed me when I'm just thinking of it from his description is I'm like, no, he's not, because if you're reliving a memory, you can't do it different. You know what I mean? That's why every time I was like, that doesn't make sense. And then once it starts to reveal more that it's parallel dimensions, I guess, that he's visiting those last 8 minutes, I'm like, okay, well, then it makes sense that he can do something different at least, because otherwise I was getting very bogged down in the logic of source code because they try and sort of talk about it. And I'm like, once you acknowledge the logic of source code, it makes me want to know, well, how does this work? And obviously you can't explain how it works. It's not real, but it's like a hot tub time machine. They don't explain it how the hot tub time machine works, because then you're just going to be thinking about that. So I was like,
it's sort of like this, the Animus in Assassin's Creed, where I don't know, Dylan, if you've ever played Assassin's Creed, but in that, the protagonist is reliving the lives of his ancestors. And while he's in the Animus, he can make decisions as the ancestors that alter the flow of history.
Yes. So I think, obviously in a game it makes sense because you're making the choices. But I think from a movie standpoint, it gets worrisome if you're too bogged down thinking about that and not going along the ride with the characters. You know what I mean?
So, okay, heard. But this is what I don't understand. So even if he's going back to different dimensions to relive the same 8 minutes to try to have a different outcome, how, if he's been doing this for 2 months, as they say, or 3 months or whatever it is, how is it that he's going to prevent a future attack? Because at this point, that future attack already happened.
Well, you see, at the end, when Rutledge says, all right, now it's time to erase his memory and reinitialize, for those 2 months, he's probably been doing it with different attacks. And so when we're watching it now, it's this current attack in Chicago. But between the time he died and this attack in Chicago, he may have been doing this for other attacks and had mixed results. And then this attack was the attack that convinced Rutledge that it's, okay, this program works. We're going to keep doing it and keep making this dead veteran relive other people's lives to find more terrorists.
Yeah, I figured that out by the end, but Gab, I was in the exact same spot you were, because again, it's one of those things where the more details you give me, the more I'm going to linger on those details. So like they said,
Right.
we've been at this for 2 months, and I was like, but it happened this morning. Like I felt very
Right.
stupid for a minute,
But
and then by the end, I
and
was like, oh, okay, he's been doing other things.
but then I got confused because at the end he was like emailing the woman and he's like, "Hey, so just so you know, da, 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 da." But I'm like, so she doesn't know either, or it changed the future, so she doesn't remember the past? Like what? Huh?
So when he's sending that email, he is now in a timeline where he prevented the attack on the train. And so he's not, so where Colleen Goodwin got arrested for taking him off his life support, that didn't happen in her timeline. And so when he sends that message, he's emailing a Colleen Goodwin who hasn't met Coulter yet.
I this timeline shit makes me feel like I am like I have a third grade education. Like I
This
do
reminds-
not understand.
Yeah, this reminds me of when we watched Your Name, and you were very bogged down in that. It also there's another movie that had a controversy around it that it reminds me of. Gab, I don't think you probably ever saw this movie, but Scotty, I'd bet, you like the comic book stuff like I do enough that you would have seen Wonder Woman 1984.
Oh, yes.
It was a huge deal in that movie that people were very upset that they brought back Chris
Steve
Pine's
Trevor.
character, Steve Trevor, yes. And instead of just having him like magically back from the dead, since it's by magic, they have him sort of take over another human being, and people are like, he's putting that guy at risk, and Gal Gadot's having unconsensual, stooping with this random guy who Steve Trevor, isn't actually this guy. And I think by the end, which we won't spoil it yet, but we're going to get to that spoiler. But at some point, he keeps taking over. Coulter Stevens keeps going and becoming Sean Fentress. And the thing is, no matter what he's doing, he's not Sean Fentress. He's Coulter Stevens. So at some point, it's like, I'm trying to remember Michelle Monaghan's name. Christina, you said?
Christina Warner.
Christina has this relationship with Sean where it's like Coulter Stevens goes for it and kisses her and she's into it. And I'm like, but she doesn't like Jake Gyllenhaal. She likes random history teacher.
Well, you see, if you paid attention to a lot of those like flashbacks he's having between each trial, where it's like the blue and he sees the cloud gate and the bean, those are Sean Fentress's memories. And so he is gaining Sean Fentress's memories. And so the more he's in it, the more he becomes like the Sean Fentress character.
I think this is one of those movies that would benefit me to have seen it more than one time.
Well, yes, I own it. So
I would like to air another grievance that I had with this film,
Go off,
if I
Gab.
may. Okay. So this felt like one of those movies that I would refer to as an, oh, by the way, because I felt as though more than one time we were in the movie and they were like, oh, by the way, he had a fight with his dad before he died. So he's really into his, he misses his dad. He wishes he could talk to his dad. And oh, by the way, this girl, he likes her now. You know what I mean? Like it felt like, oh, yeah. And we forgot to mention something happened where da da da. You know what I mean? Like, am I alone in this?
You're not alone in this. Like I do like the idea of him having that lingering thing with his dad because it makes sense that he has that there. And spoiler, we find out that Jake Gyllenhaal's character, the actual Coulter Stevens, is pretty much dead. He's like a brain that's plugged in. You know what I mean? Which is interesting. I found that kind of cool. Like when you find out that the room he's in is a mental manifestation, and then he's able to change the room. And I really like the moment where you see, it sort of made me think of Jumpin' Jack Flash, when you see that what Vera Farmiga's character is actually seeing is not him talking, it's just text that comes up. So it's like, just like brain words. I'm like, does every one of his thoughts go through there? At some point, is he like, do I need to poop still? Like, I don't know. But
right.
I've gone so far off the trail of what I was going to say, Gab. What did you say?
I said this movie has a lot of, oh, by the way, his
revelations.
Yes, I liked the thing with the dad because I felt like that would be something unfinished business type of thing. Not that this is a ghost movie, but the thing I like less, and it feels like the movie hinges a lot on it, is it really wants me to buy the romance between him and Christina, who he's probably spent like 2 hours with, by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
also
tough.
that he spent 2 hours with, and she thinks he's somebody else.
But she likes, it's a new him.
I don't know. The whole thing, I don't know.
I do like the first couple where he doesn't realize they're actual people yet, and he's like going in guns blazing and just punching people out.
You're no more real than he is.
Yeah, like he's just decking people in the face at first, and I'm like, damn, my man's on a mission. He's like, I'm gonna find out the bomber with these.
Yeah. I was into that. I have to be honest, I was pretty bought in the whole time. Like some movies I'm like, oh God, I don't want to watch this. But this one I was like, oh shit, whoa, yeah. But then by the end I was like, this timeline, this thing keeps happening that I don't quite understand. But I will say this. I thought that the concept of him being, like you said, Dylan, essentially a brain that's plugged in and his thoughts are coming up as text. And it sort of begs the question of like, what to do. How do I phrase this? It begs the question of like, how much humanity does like a veteran who is dead deserve, right? Like, do we let him die with dignity? Do we keep him plugged in because we can use him? You know what I mean? I'm saying
Well, and I
the
think
context
that's one
of the
of the
movie.
interesting things about Goodwin and Rutledge is Rutledge wants to keep him plugged in and keep using him, no
Right.
matter how like morally.
Well, and it's an interesting thing they say at one point. Rutledge literally says, like, wouldn't the noblest thing you could do to keep serving your country if you're able to?
And
And
if you pay attention, you see Colleen Goodwin stare at him like that's not what a veteran thinks.
yes,
Because
and I like,
she's also a military personnel.
yeah, I like that he does respond to that. Like any veteran will tell you, dying for your country once is enough, you know. And I did buy into, and I don't think there's a way you could blend these two together, but I did buy the relationship between Coulter Stevens and um
Goodwin.
Goodwin. Those two, I was like, okay, I get their relationship, and you can't make her the love interest because she's not going to be like, oh, brain, you know. But
Right.
Well, it's like when he was talking to her after like unveiling the terrorist, she's like, "Are you asking me on a date?" And it's like, "No, I'm just asking if you would choose a different path if you."
which I don't think at that time you realize yet that he's just like a head in a box, you know, pretty much.
Yeah,
It's
you
my
So,
head
still
in a
think that
box.
there's like,
which I will say, were you guys freaked out when they do finally actually show what Coulter Stevens, what remains of him?
Yes.
my first watching.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is I was like, well, I'm going back and pausing on that. I got to see what's going on in this image. I was like, ugh.
And I also really like that once you see that, it's when Coulter is talking to his dad, and you hear Scott Bakula says, "I miss him so much," and you see Colleen just like close her eyes and see what's left of Coulter.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference between her and Rutledge. Is Rutledge has zero empathy, and Goodwin at least is, you know, recognizes that even though he's technically already dead, if he's still exhibiting sentience, he can still, you know, feel these things, then he's a person, you know? Um, I don't know. I think those parts of it are very interesting to me. The part that doesn't work for me is the romance as much, and I don't think it really matters. So I think that's why we sort of glaze past it. The villain could not be more like the actual bomber of the train is just like, I just wanted to bomb a train. Seemed like a thing to
So,
do.
yeah,
you
he's
know?
an expressionist terrorist.
Yeah, which, you know,
So he's not like a rationalist who actually has more defined goals. This is my education coming into play, knowing
yeah,
the
he's more Dark Knight Joker than anything else. He's like, I'm a dog chasing cars. I don't know what to do if I catch one.
I just
yes,
feel
he
a little
is.
bit like the other thing the movie didn't do very well was like there were so many characters on the train, and it was like so obvious that the guy who was like continued to be like, you dropped your wallet, and he was like, oh,
No, you
thanks.
thought
Like it
so?
was, yeah, I was like, it's obviously this guy. Because it was like the movie made a point to continue to show us that over and over and over and over. And it was like everybody else was like just like douchey enough that it was like, well, it's obviously not the comedian. It's obviously not the black guy. You know, it was like, come on, I know where this is going.
I wrote it down. Literally, my third note is I feel like someone getting off the train here is going to matter. But I will tell you, I was fully bought in. Like when he's chasing that first guy who gets off the train and like goes to the bathroom and he's just like keeps eyeballing this dude and he's like, hey, you got a cell phone I can borrow? Like, you know who would be the funny version of this movie? Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg would be like, hey, you thinking about blowing open trains today? Like, I feel like that would be interesting to watch. But I bought it by that point. Like I was very much bought into, no, it's this guy. Like each time he went up to a new person, uh, I was along for the ride. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
that guy.
it didn't rely on a red herring. I think it's kind of annoying when a mystery movie keeps making you think this red herring is the person. Like I think the first Wonder Woman is a good example. It's like this World War I general guy is Ares, but then it's by the end, it's like, okay, it's clearly not. So who is it? And then once the revelation is like, oh, that was stupid. And so it just has a different suspect each time he's in, instead of focusing on one red herring throughout the movie.
And it ends up being
Yeah.
much more. It's really not about the bomber at all. It's about his process in finding the bomber, and it's about what's he going to keep doing with the 8 minutes of life that he gets.
Can we also talk about the bomber having a big white van full of bomb and just like having gotten this far? You know what I mean? Like his whole van was a giant bomb. I would hope that it would have raised a few eyebrows at some point. He had to load all the
people
bombs
have
into the
vans
van.
every day, Gab.
Well, yeah,
Right,
I mean,
but if you see some that there were think about how many bombs were in that van. He's loading the van at some point.
You say that, Gab. We're laughing at this movie. He's driving like a fucking Volkswagen Beetle. Like,
Yeah.
check out the trunk of my Mini Cooper. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on, it's a very terroristy vehicle.
I'm
yeah,
just
there are no
saying.
windows where he has that whole thing wired up. It's kind of like a Timothy McVeigh where he had, I'm getting this for correctly, McVeigh had like a van where no windows could see into the bombs he had in
I mean, there's a
Oklahoma
reason it's a
City. And so
stereotype. A lot of
Yeah.
terrorists, kidnappers. The van industry is built on people who are moving a lot of things like bands and kidnappers. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that's their
And
main
bombs.
clientele. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess then the other thing that I kind of had a problem with was like, I just don't think Jake Gyllenhaal is that good. Handsome, not super talented.
He
Like
is handsome.
not a lot of depth, light eyes, not a lot of depth.
Is this your favorite Jake Gyllenhaal performance?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking Toddy.
Oh, well, as from what I've seen of him so far, yes. Like going into this, all I had seen him in was Spider-Man Far From Home and Prince of Persia. I was like, I didn't think much of him going into this, but like coming out, especially that scene where he's on the phone with his dad, I was like, man, those movies that I had seen with him previously kind of wasted him.
He's come a long way since Bubble Boy, which if you've
Yes.
never heard of Bubble Boy, Google Jake Gyllenhaal Bubble Boy and just look at the images and you'll be like, really? This is what he was doing? The movie that made me take Jake Gyllenhaal seriously was Prisoners. So I don't know if either one of you have ever seen that movie, but
It has Hugh Jackman.
it has Hugh Jackman, it has him, and they
Paul
are
Dano.
both. Paul Dano is great in that movie. Terrence Howard, I think, is in it too, if I'm remembering right. And
Yeah.
it is really good. Really good. I remember seeing it in the theater and I was talking about it with Giselle just now because we were talking about she was having the same conversation that she was like, Jake Gyllenhaal, don't like him. You know what I mean? It's just one of those
Yeah.
actors and she's like, don't like the vibes. And Prisoners is always what I come back to that I'm like, yeah, you know what? He's all right in my book. That and Zodiac.
Mhm.
Has he ever been nominated for an Academy Award?
I feel like he could have been for one of those two. I'll have to check that.
Or maybe even October Sky, because the Academy loves those true story movies.
I think, oh no, because I remember it was a big deal that he didn't get nominated for Nightcrawler. So I think he might not have ever been nominated. That's actually, he's really good in that movie too. He's really
think
good
I
at
would've-
playing creepy, isolated people.
Yeah. I think I would have liked this movie better if it were Ryan Gosling, like a la Drive.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in what way? A la Drive.
Like, remember, well, Ryan Gosling does a lot of like, silly like comedy stuff and lighthearted stuff, but in Drive, he was so good and he didn't really say anything, but he was just like very ominous. And I think he would have been a really good like war veteran, like out on a mission kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
I want the Notebook Gosling who's captured the terrorist and is like, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Jake Gyllenhaal was
That
nominated for
great.
an Oscar, by the way, for Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, of course,
Ooh.
duh. Gay cowboy, duh. I fell asleep. I fell asleep during that movie.
I just saw that clip again on like Instagram where it's him and Heath Ledger, and he's like, "Now all we got is Brokeback Mountain," and I'm like, "That's just one of those scenes where somebody says the title. I've never seen any of the movie. I'm just like, okay, I don't know what it means." Yeah,
I don't know. Have you seen it, Scotty?
I have not. I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
It's been one of those movies that's been on my radar.
Yeah. Somebody let us know if it's a movie to watch before you die, please.
I also wrote as a note, I wrote his dad's got to be dead because he keeps asking for him, and you know what? I was like halfway there. I was flipped, twist, turned around. Yeah, wrong one was dead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all very confusing.
I also do really like the line where he says, "One soldier to another, am I dead?" Like,
Yeah. I actually watched this movie on Memorial Day after doing Murph. First time in a weighted vest.
Scotty, do you know what that is? I have no idea what Murph is.
No.
Really?
Murph is just the character
Really?
from Interstellar to me.
No.
I
So
believe. Yeah.
Oh, Murph is a workout that CrossFitters do on Memorial Day. It actually honors Lieutenant Michael Murphy, who is from Patchogue,
Oh.
Dill. And which is close to where we grew up. And it's a workout where women wear a 14-pound weighted vest, men wear a 20-pound weighted vest. You run a mile, you do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you run another mile. And I've done it before, but not in a weighted vest. And so this year we did it in a weighted vest. And it really, while you're doing it, you really can't help. And I'm no fucking like military person, but you can't help but think like, wow, these guys really are wearing all this shit and going out there and like running around and fighting people and shit. And it's heavy and you're hot and you're tired. And then I watched this movie afterward and I was like, damn, fucking military. Like, thanks, guys.
What a tepid loose connection that was, guy.
Yeah. No, it makes sense to me. I was like, wow, people who serve really fucking serve, And then you got Jake Gyllenhaal, who's like dead and they're exploiting him. And I was like, God, just let him die, man. He just wants to die. He's done enough.
If we can remember this a year from now, I so badly want Gav to post on like Instagram or whatever social media is around and go, people who serve really serve. that to me, that's the quote of the podcast to me.
There we go.
Real American heroes.
Yeah, that's your G.I. Joe quote.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it did it for me. It did it for me. It was a good experience. I'm glad I did it all in the same day. You know what military movie I really didn't care for? What was the Matthew McConaughey movie with the American Sniper?
Oh, Bradley Cooper.
Bradley
Cooper. I always confuse them. I didn't care for it.
Never saw it.
Yeah,
I've only seen the clip of the fake baby.
Fake baby.
I've seen that movie.
He's like cradling a baby, and it's they show a shot where it's very clearly just a doll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do
it
that.
feels like it's like Clint Eastwood, but there's a lot of like feels like just you made like a generic military action movie.
It's
Clint
very
Eastwood
propaganda-y.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giving Michael Bay a run for his money. But
Yeah.
better quality than your run-of-the-mill Michael Bay movie.
It would be interesting to see the Michael Bay version of that, which I feel like he's definitely done a bunch of like military movies.
He did a 13 Hours
Oh yeah, that is him.
later. And Pearl Harbor.
Oh, he's definitely done a lot
Pearl
of
Harbor was him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. Was Jake Gyllenhaal in that? No,
No, that's Ben Affleck.
Jennifer Garner.
Who's the other? Is it Matt Damon?
I don't think
so. I think I just always pair the two, but I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Speaking of Ben Affleck, and I got made fun of for it already, so I'm going to say it. I just watched Jersey Girl, and you know what? It ain't bad. I liked it.
Okay, good. I'm happy for you.
Giselle came home she was away for the weekend. She came home and saw that I'd bought the DVD Jersey Girl, and she was like, "Fuck is that?" I was like, "What?" I was like, "Don't you judge me."
Oh my God. I don't think I've ever seen that movie, but that's the one with Dakota Fanning?
Nope.
Brittany Murphy?
Nope.
Okay, okay, what is it then?
It's the one where Liv Tyler is like his main love interest, but in the beginning of the movie, it's him and J-Lo, and J-Lo is the mother, and she passes away, and then it's him being a single dad.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you.
Famously
I don't want
got a bunch of Razzies for being like the worst movie, but I also think it's because people hated Bennifer at the time.
that.
But
Are
enough
you
about
thinking of
Jersey Girl.
Geely? Or because
It's kind of both.
Geely is what's often considered the
Mm.
worst movie.
It's both that were hated very badly.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I think Gigli's more
2000
hated.
Did you say
2002
Jiggly?
to 2003
Jiggly?
was not a good year. Time
Did
for
you
that.
say Jiggly?
How am I supposed to Gigli?
It's
Jigglypuff?
just Geely. There's no second G. It's silent.
There is a second G.
Okay, well, you
There's
don't
a
say
second
It's
it.
a
G in the-
homage.
You
Which-
are
which is
you
another
are
word I
going
never said.
to pronunciation hell.
Okay. Enough about Jersey Girl. Enough about Giggly. I also think it's important to think about, and I was reading somebody's review on Letterboxd that really brought this up. The fact that this movie does come out during the War on Terror and does seem to sort of want to make a lot of comments about that, where Rutledge,
It's
like we
10
said,
years
is
after 9/11.
yeah, Rutledge isn't the bad guy, but you can tell like I guess I'd call him he's as much the antagonist as the actual terrorist is, and he's the most pro-war. He literally says at one point, "We finally have a weapon in the war on terror," and it's like,
He's basically a juggler.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you're basically like, yeah, you know what? If our weapon in the war on terror is coming 10 years after the terrorist attack, kind of late, you know?
I mean, we also got bin Laden 10 years after the attack, when you think about
Well,
it.
yeah, but that's
Was it only 10 years after? It felt like it was so long.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great day. I'm going to
I
be
remember
honest.
that
Every
day.
time Bin Laden is mentioned, I think of the Miley Cyrus song Party in the USA. Is that just me?
yeah. Absolutely.
Scotty, just me?
Yeah. I don't really
I'm telling you,
I don't
when
listen
that
to Miley Cyrus that much either. So
I don't either, but I remember when that was announced by it was Obama on the TV saying that like they got Bin Laden, and I was in college at the time, and I remember in the entire dorm, all you could hear was "Party in the USA."
Yeah. I went to Times Square that night. It was lit. People were partying.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in the 7th grade.
Listen, I'm just saying.
Oh boy.
Next time you think about Bin Laden, throw it on. The two
Okay.
mix well.
Well,
I'll
as
leave it
I
at
think
that.
about Bin Laden all the time, it will surely be an easy thing to do.
Also, do you guys have either of you ever seen the movie Deja Vu?
I've heard of it.
Because Scotty, I got to tell you, it's very similar.
Mhm.
I was reading because I remember seeing that movie in theaters, and I'm watching this movie, and by the time I got to the end, I was like, "Are these the same?" Because I was trying to figure it out, and so I'm reading about it on Wikipedia. In Deja Vu, they have a machine that sends him back 4.5 days before an attack, and I'm like, Deja Vu, they just built the way better machine. Like they were like, you got plenty of time. Don't worry about it. Meanwhile, in this, it's like, listen here, you got 30 seconds. I don't know. Good luck. I think Jake Gyllenhaal could have done a lot more with 4.5 days.
Yeah. I often wonder in movies like this is kind of related. We see the same scene kind of over and over and over again. Do you think that they use a lot of like the same footage, or do you think they make them redo it every time?
I think they
Because
redid it
obviously,
a lot.
but every time?
I can't guarantee that, Gab. There may be one take where they reused footage, but I think they did it a lot. I think a lot of the people who were on the train spent days on the train.
Yikes. Okay.
It's sort of like with the movie Red Eye when we did that. If you were an extra in Red Eye, you were basically a featured actor because you're in that movie 80% of the movie.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, I don't have much else to say besides it was okay. I'm trying to leave you on the edge of your seat here.
Scott, you got any more big opinions on source code before we get into facts?
Well, and I really the only thing is I do like how the time loop builds the mystery. Like part of it is like I do like the rewatch value. Like I didn't catch that the ID was shown during the second trial, my first watch through. And so when I went through and watched it again, it's like, oh, there are all these clues to
When you say ID, what ID?
So in the second like trial, after he realizes that he really was a bomb, when Derek Frost drops his ID, it makes an effort like to zoom in on the ID of Derek Frost, and then like when he goes into the bathroom and finds the bomb.
Okay. You know, it's funny. I didn't really think about it. Confused me for a moment, and I'm so glad that the movie has a throwaway line explaining it. When the guy comes off and gives him the wallet, and then he like is like, "Thanks a lot," and chucks the wallet back on. I was like, "Wait, why do you do that? I don't get it." Um, Gav's
I
giving me
thought
a
the
look like
wallet was the bomb.
a wallet bomb.
I don't know.
You think he's bringing a whole van for a wallet bomb? No.
Maybe.
Um, no, but until like he's punching him and he says something along the lines of, "You wanted people to think that you died on the train." I was like, "Oh," I didn't feel very smart in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I have more things to say, but I'm gonna save it for my verdict, I think.
Okay. Last opinion I'll say is I think Michelle Monaghan does a very good job with what she's given because I think it's a difficult character to sort of just keep replaying as the same person, and she doesn't have a lot to work with, and I think she does the best she can to make us like Christina. You know what I mean? Because it's not a lot there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do have one other thing I'd like to say just to piggyback on that.
I'm
I
sorry, you
think
said you'd say it in the verdicts. You're done.
no, 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 no. I
Okay.
object. The to me, none of these characters really have a lot of depth. Um, I think that there's a lot of artificial depth with like the Jake Gyllenhaal's dad thing and the like, oh, these are real people. I care because they're real people. Like, I think there's a lot of artificial depth, but I don't think any of the characters are well-rounded enough that we're really rooting for any of them. I would argue that the most well-rounded character is Dr. What's-His-Face, who
Goodwin or
is like
Rutledge?
Rutledge, who
Okay.
is bad. And it's like, oh yeah, well, this is just like an evil prick. Like he's, the war guy. But like none of the other characters are really selling anything, I think. I don't know. Is that a hot take?
Scott, I don't know if you want to address that, but I would say I think as individual characters, I do think a lot of them are thin, but I think Rutledge works to me, Goodwin works to me, and Coulter Stevens works well enough to me. But what works really well, I'd say, is those three, and maybe it's just they're also just all three of them are very good actors. I bought all of those relationships. You know what I mean? So I think maybe that's
I'll
just
give
the
you the good
actors.
one. I'll give you Goodwin.
And I think also those three, the movie spends the most time with because like between each trial, he's consulting Goodwin, like she lets him know that there's like a gun he can find. Whereas a lot of the passengers, they're mostly just there to be innocent victims of a horrific attack. And
Yeah.
so like Goodwin even says, they're just shadows of to what she believes, shadows of a past event. They're not real. But Coulter, through Christina, believes they are. And so
Christina's the biggest character that's like, she's probably the person on the train. Well, she's definitely the person on the train we spend by far the most time with, and the movie is very much wanting me to buy Christina, buy that romance. And because Christina is always going back to sort of just getting in on the act, which, there's nothing that that character can do about it. It's she's stuck in the time loop, or she's constantly his restart point for his alternate dimension traveling.
mhm.
It's difficult to build her because each time we see her, she's first being like, "You're weird today," Like I said, I think
Yeah.
she does a good job with what she's given. I just don't think it's easy to build that much there because you have to keep starting over.
Mhm.
Yeah. I didn't really love that they threw in, and I guess like they needed to have some kind of like, well, they're not in a relationship, but they're interested in each other kind of dynamic. But she was like, my ex-boyfriend keeps calling. It was like, oh my God, like who cares? Like we didn't need this. We could have figured that out without this, like, and oh, by the way, they're not dating, but they want to, I don't know. It was so heavy-handed to me.
Well, I think if she doesn't already like Sean, it would be weirder for Jake Gyllenhaal Sean for Coulter to keep coming onto her.
Pursuing
You know
her,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
When he first does it, I was like, there's a chance she's not going to be cool with this, but she is. Like, you know, you could have the Groundhog Day version of this where he tries that a couple times and it doesn't work, and then he tries it and it does work. But it also would feel selfish if he's like, let me keep spending these 8 minutes trying to get with Christina. Meanwhile, everyone's about to die. Like, you know, well, he's got to prioritize a little.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's got to play
All right.
detective.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get to the facts?
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
Thank you, Scotty.
I just want to play. I'm just going to play Scotty instead. I'm just going to leave this whole recording and just have Scotty's transitions instead.
I like it.
Okay.
I want the truth.
Face the facts, ducks.
Facts have no place with an organized religion.
I'm going to start with IMDb, which gave it a 7.5 out of 10. And I got to tell you, I'm 99.9% sure that I left my Rotten Tomatoes ratings for Wally, because I don't think that it got a 7.5 out of 10, but a 97% on the tomato meter. A 90. Oh, wow. No, it's still really good. A 92% on the tomato meter. With 61 fresh reviews and 9 rotten, and an audience score of 82%.
Wow.
Yeah, so not too bad. The critics' consensus. Oh well, first it had a budget of $32 million. It grossed $147 million, which I think movie theaters need to put out more movies like that, where when you have a budget of $32 million, you don't need to hit Avengers
$1 billion.
ceilings. Yeah, not every movie's going to make $1 billion. And you know what? This movie definitely made money.
Well, yeah, it's one of those where Duncan Jones, the director, is like, he mentioned, like, because there's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Hollywood accounting, is like, even though it grossed like between twice its budget to twice and a half, apparently the studio somehow still lost money on it. It's like, because of Hollywood accounting, it's like this mysterious thing throughout Hollywood where it fits the criteria for success, but it's still somehow a failure.
I can tell you
Like
with real
Coming to
accounting,
America, the
a
famous.
corporation always finds a way to not have made any money and not need to pay any taxes.
Yes, correct.
The critics' consensus: finding the human story amidst the action, director Duncan Jones and charming Jake Gyllenhaal craft a smart, satisfying sci-fi thriller.
I just don't think he's charming.
Well, he
I
didn't
just don't
charm
think
you.
he's charming. No.
You still think he's handsome though,
Yes.
even though he's only half a torso?
No. No,
His
that
brain
was
is
a
out
turn
of his
off.
skull with wires in it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
now we know,
and his
Scotty.
face
That's the
going-
line. Hey, how much better would you do with one limb? All right. Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars. He said, here's a movie where you forgive the preposterous because it takes you to the perplexing, which I think might be a bit high praise. I think that's an interesting, that's a review like quote that I feel like could work for so many different great movies. You know what I mean? It feels like a tagline where I'm like, well, he's putting that on every DVD box. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if you're reading it from Rotten Tomatoes, that's just the last person the reviewer wrote. Like all the critics' reviews, it's the last sentence or paragraph of their review on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's generally what I
little
take.
blurb.
Yeah. For Roger Ebert, sometimes I go and read more of it, depending on if it's like the rare occasion where it's not something good,
Yeah.
but not for anyone else. So Maria Poles, the last thing she said from Time Magazine, it is a tremendous downer when the second half of the movie shirks logic, defies its own established principles, and raises more questions than it answers.
I would agree with that.
It's hard to say because does it shirk logic? Sure. But is it defying its own established principles? Not really. It defies Rutledge, what he said. Because Rutledge, what he thinks he made is you go into the last 8 minutes of one person's life and get to redo it. But what Coulter feels by the end is you're going to 8 minutes of Sean's life in universe B and trying again. You know, and he just
That's why
keeps
he has those visions.
Yes.
Where he sees the cloud gate. It's because he's seeing Sean Fentress's life and the future of Sean Fentress if he survives the attack or if the attack never happens.
Poor Sean. And how many universes does Sean just get taken over by another person? Although I guess it's fine. He's just dying anyway, most of the time. Andrew Barker from Variety. Solid execution and some provocative ideas can't save source code from a fatal hubris, as it thinks itself far more clever than it actually is and assumes it's earned emotions at which it's only hinted. Which, if I thought Roger Ebert's praise was too high, I think Andrew Barker's a little too harsh. That's just me. Lastly, Peter Travers from Rolling Stone. Think of Groundhog Day morphing from comedy to thriller, and you'll get an idea of the mischief afoot in source code.
I agree with that.
Yeah, fair enough. A couple letterbox reviews. Lauren said Groundhog Day, but with a lead you want to fuck.
And there's so many letterbox reviews talking about how attractive Jake Gyllenhaal
It seemed to be a big thing on there. Yeah.
It's
I will
he
say
has going for him.
He's much more fuckable than Bill Murray. I don't think there's any debate there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rudy, this movie is just a Black Mirror episode on steroids, which also fair.
Yep.
Allison M, the 2011 technology is so cute. It's like they can't get internet on their phones, but they can repeat a time loop, which also fair. Like they're pulling out like sidekicks and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's top secret government tech.
Yeah. It's top secret. You can't send this through SMS Messenger. And Vinny Sims, the composer for this movie, is named Chris P. Bacon.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That can't be real.
And the music sizzles.
Damn. No.
The movie was directed by, as Scotty mentioned, Duncan Jones, who also directed Moon and Warcraft, and most famously is the son of Scotty. Do you know who?
No.
Really?
The Donuts guy.
No, he's the son of David Bowie.
What?
Yeah.
What's his name? Duncan who?
Duncan Jones.
Duncan Jones.
Duncan
He's not
Sheik.
heir to the Duncan fortune. Duncan Sheik is the barely breathing guy. Very different.
The barely breathing guy.
Yes.
I love that song though. It's a great
Scotty
song.
was
He
negative
also
12
wrote-
when that song came out.
Yeah, honestly. He also wrote, Duncan Sheik wrote all the music for Spring Awakening, which is a Broadway musical.
That's nice, but he has nothing to do with source code.
No, but Duncan Sheik slaps.
This is not the Duncan Sheik podcast, Gab.
Because I'm barely breathing. Sorry, okay. Anyway.
The screenplay for source code is by Ben Ripley, who also wrote the 2017 movie Flatliners, Species
Dylan.
The Awakening, and Species 3.
I'm so okay. That's great, Dylan. Can we just pause for one moment? The Mets just lost again.
Yeah.
Dylan, what the fuck?
We can't address that now. Now's not the time.
Oh, okay.
Can we get back to facts?
Yeah.
Thank you. The screenplay, I already said that. The movie stars Jake Gyllenhaal as Coulter Stevens, who you may know from Donnie Darko, Roadhouse, the new one, Brokeback Mountain, and Bubble Boy. Michelle Monaghan as Christina Warren, who you may know from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Pixels, and Gone Baby Gone.
Mission Impossible 2. 3, but
3.
She's in the...
Yeah, I don't know why I chose Pixels over that. Feels
She's
like an
also
insult.
in Fallout and Ghost Protocol.
I believe she's also in Eagle Eye, which I remember also being very forgettable. Yeah. Not her fault, but whatever. Vera Farmiga as Colleen Goodwin, who you may know from the Conjuring universe, Orphan, and Bates Motel. And Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, I loved Bates Motel. Okay.
Really? I never saw it.
Yep. Oh my God, it was good.
And finally, Jeffrey Wright as Dr. Rutledge, who you may know from The Batman, Westworld, the recent James Bond movies, and as the fake FBI agent in Game Night who gets knocked out.
And the Batman.
That was the first one I said.
And Scott Bakula as Donald Stevens, who was Jonathan Archer in Star Trek Enterprise.
He's someone else who's even more relevant that I'll bring up in a second. The movie was nominated at the 2011 Golden Schmoes Awards for Trippiest Movie of the Year and Most Underrated Movie of the Year. Some fun facts. Jake Gyllenhaal had an earpiece in during the train sequences, where the director would start playing music at any point in time to help Gyllenhaal look disoriented. Random songs as well as static buzz at different times. So if he's randomly looking confused on the train at some point, Duncan Jones is just blasting some weird music in his ears.
That's especially present in the opening when he's like coffee spill.
What were you saying?
But I was just gonna say, I feel like if you're an actor and you know the director is gonna play music to confuse you, it wouldn't be confusing. I don't know.
I don't know if it's loud enough. I'd still be confused. Although
It's also
I
if
would just look
it's
scared then, which is not the idea you want.
I'd be like, oh God, turn it off.
I just thought this was a nice thing of Jake Gyllenhaal because he doesn't actually share any scenes with Vera Farmiga and Jeffrey Wright. Jake Gyllenhaal deliberately stayed on after filming his scenes to provide the voice work that his two fellow actors could bounce off of. That's a nice thing to do.
especially because in the actual movie he's just text on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's nice.
The caller ID photo of Christina's ex-boyfriend Brian is the director Duncan Jones.
AKA young David Bowie.
Lindsay Lohan was originally cast in the role of Christina. However, producers decided to recast the role when her legal issues conflicted with the filming schedule.
If it were Lindsay Lohan, it would have been a movie.
It would have been a better movie?
Don't hit me with fish.
So she saves the movie for you. Okay.
Yeah.
None of the sessions in the source code actually last 8 minutes of screen time. The third session is the longest, taking 7.5 minutes. Coulter's third time inside the source code gives away the ending. He does not die when the bomb goes off, but a few minutes after when he falls off the track, which reveals that he can survive the bomb going. I didn't even think about that until I just reread that.
Me neither.
And the last one here. The pilot episode of the show Quantum Leap features the main character, played by Scott Bakula, jumping into someone else's body in the past, and the episode ends with him calling and talking to his father, as he is still alive during this time. In the final scene of source code, when the main character similarly takes advantage of being in the past to call his father, the father is voiced by Quantum Leap star Scott Bakula.
And he says, "Oh boy," which was his catchphrase in Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap.
Scott Bakula. Who is that?
He's an actor who I guarantee you've seen in something. If you look up his IMDb.
Why
He's
does
Captain
his name-
Archer in Star Trek.
That means nothing to me. You know it. Why does his name sound like Dracula?
I don't know, but I believe it's his actual name.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway. Cool.
Why does Dracula sound like Scott Bakula? Think about
That's
that.
a great
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
question. That movie would be a good one to do.
You think? I feel like the Austin Powers movies have to have aged poorly by this point.
Oh yeah, but that's why it would be fun. Okay. Where do we go from here, Bill?
Is it mail time or verdict time?
You know, you're the second person in a row to think that we do the mail live.
Well, I know you do it afterwards because your guests aren't in the mail schedule.
And unfortunately, we have no mail, Scotty, because you're here.
Yes, you better comment on this episode. Yeah, I think we just need to. I think I have so much that I'm holding in. I need to let it all out.
All right. We're heading straight to the verdict, it seems.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The guilty will be punished.
Sentence.
Death.
The guilty will be punished.
Thank you. Ah.
No.
Death.
Scotty, do you believe Source Code is a movie to watch before you die?
Yeah, I think with its time loop, it does a clever job at building a mystery where I think playing with time, using it as a device to solve a mystery, is a very clever way of creating the movie and building two mysteries that you want to have solved at the end. The one being the one it doesn't introduce you with, but builds at the end with the revelation of Coulter's actual condition. So I do believe it's the movie to watch before you die.
Yeah, do you want to go next or you want me to go first?
Well, I'd like to go next because I think you're the mystery here. So halfway through this movie, I texted you, Dylan, and I said, we've seen this movie before. And that's because it is a combination of Groundhog Day, Your Name, and some of these other action movies that we've watched, the Schwarzenegger blowing up the bridge movie thing, True Lies.
Really?
I wanted to be in so badly because I felt like I didn't know anything about the movie going in, but I was like, damn, this is cool. He's going back in time. He's gonna solve the mystery, blah, blah, blah. But it really lost me with the logic. And I understand that I don't do well with parallel universes, but I did not get past how little logic there was. I felt like the characters were underdeveloped. I felt like the things that were tethering the importance of the events were added in last minute, such as his father and the love interest and all that stuff. It felt very much like, oh, by the way. And ultimately, you know, Scotty Cameron, he gave us Vampire's Kiss, which I think is the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. And this just simply could not hold up. And I think my expectations were high. I wanted another Vampire's Kiss. I didn't get it. So it's going to be a no from me, dog.
Oh, well, there'll be a 10-minute episode later on. It'll be a yes.
No.
Yeah, you can't bet on those. Does this make me, am I the Paula Abdul?
Yeah.
Did you Brady Jackson me?
Yeah.
All right. You know, it's tough because I will say the day before I watched the movie, my friend Steve was over and he's like, oh, what are you watching for the podcast? And I went, Source Code, actually. And he went, Source Code. I feel like I've heard of that. So I was like, you definitely heard of it. It was a big movie. So I put on the trailer and we both watched the trailer. And I got to tell you, just from the trailer, I was like, I don't know, man, this seems a little schlocky. You know what I mean? Like, because the trailer reveals a lot of those lines that are like a little bit more heavy handed that, you know, I'd make those seconds count. And like, I'm just asking you to give me the human decency to try. Like, it's a little too schmaltzy just put together in the trailer. But I'll say when I actually watched the movie, it was much better than I expected it to be. Because the trailer was like, is this going to be super schlock? And I'm like, it's not super schlock.
Yeah, the trailer makes it out to be more of an action movie than it actually is. It's more of a mystery than it is an action movie.
Yeah, I will say I was really hoping by the end of the movie, I was hoping to feel more for Christina and Coulter / Sean, because the movie really wants me to buy that romance, to be like, he's got to survive in the alternate reality so that he could be with Christina, obviously. And I was like, why? Like, I would have been more interested in like seeing him reunite with his dad, maybe by the end of it. But although the dad would have been like, who are you? I just realized that.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough because I liked some things about it. I think the movie probably could have taken another 20 to 30 minutes, which it's rare that we say that. I feel like normally in this podcast, we're like,
I agree.
Should have snipped away at it. And I'm like, you know what? It probably could have fleshed itself out a bit more. It's not a movie to watch before you die for me, but it was not a bad watch at all. And I was worried for a bit that it would be.
Scotty, from you know, just what's the phrase? You were soaring a little too close to the sun.
Don't fly too close to the sun, Icarus.
Icarus, yes. You know, it wasn't a bad pick. It wasn't a bad pick. And I will say beforehand, having watched the trailer, I was nervous.
Do you think it was going to be Michael Bay?
Yeah, just like I expected it to be more heavy-handed bad. And I was like, no, there's some substance here. Yeah. I don't know if I don't think I'm in a rush to watch it again. And I don't know how heavily I'd recommend it. Like if somebody's a Jake Gyllenhaal fan, I guess I'd recommend it. But it wasn't bad.
If somebody's a Jake Gyllenhaal fan, they've already seen it. So really,
they're just marathoning Bubble Boy and Source Code all day.
Yeah, straight to the vein.
Brokeback Mountain, Prisoners.
I have hated other movies far more, but that doesn't at all make it a movie to watch before you die.
But take comfort that she's hated movies more.
Yeah. Recess Schools Out was
and it's a
far
comfort
worse.
that we all agree Vampire's Kiss is a movie to watch.
Of course.
Yes, a masterpiece at that. Dylan had me watch this like little YouTube video about like Nicolas Cage, and there was a whole section on Vampire's Kiss, and I was like, this is one of the best movies of all time.
It was glorious.
It was glorious. All right, let's say what we say.
All right. If you want to send in an email, like Scotty often does, you can send it to movies to watch before you die @gmail.com. You can comment on the video. You can send us a voice message at anchor.fm/movies to watch. You can find our friends in the Hall of Pods podcasting network link tree in the description below. You can find our link tree in the description below with Gab's clothing line, Source Code Fitness.
Nope. Strength Code Fitness. Source Code is the name of the movie.
I couldn't have done that if I meant to do that. Damn it. Strength Code Fitness. You can also find
Thank
Gab's
you.
Venmo there.
Yes.
Scotty, is there anything that you want to plug before we get out of this shindig?
Just socials, Twitter, Facebook, not Facebook, Instagram.
Your
I
MySpace
guess my
page,
Medium and
perhaps.
Letterboxd accounts.
Yeah. Are they all at Scotty Cameron or at Scotty's a Cam? I feel like is one of
Sackham, most of them, yeah.
them. Okay.
Scott Allen Cameron, that's what Sackham stands for.
Oh, okay. It's not Scotty's a Cam.
Yeah, it's auto generates my first name with my email address. So
Huh. All right,
No.
Scotty, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to discuss. And
Yes.
hopefully you'll be listening in a couple weeks when we're talking about another movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And please continue to comment and email because you're the only
Oh,
one.
I think I need to catch up on some commenting because I've been doing job interviews and whatnot. So
Well,
that's more important.
Yeah.
Put
And
that
we
first.
Mhm.
yeah. You need money to Venmo me.
Yes,
Excellent.
exactly.
Thank you. Working for the important things. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another movie. And for now, keep it keen.
Goodwin. One soldier to another. Am I dead?